Hey everyone, Cody Menz here. In this video I have a little bit about each of the three tanks that are going to be rewards and prizes, whether it's a permanent tank or a rental from what we can tell for the upcoming Waffentragger mode coming very soon here in September 2022. For those that do not know already, basically very soon, and there's going to be an update here on the 22nd. There's going to be basically the return of the Waffentragger mode returning here for the third year, I believe, at this point. And, you know, basically with it, there's very heavily, they're hinting that you're going to be able to get the Waffentragger E100 that was removed many years ago to be able to play basically in standard battles from the looks of it. Who knows if that's 100% true. However, the patch already hit on the Russian server and I believe the Asian server as well. And there's been a lot of little leaks and stuff coming from the client. The event's due to begin most likely anytime soon here. But from what it seems like is going to happen is there's going to be the Chieftain Prototype Tier 9 Premium British Heavy Tank. A very old KV-4 KTTS, which is a Tier 8 Russian tank destroyer that's been in the game files for like 8-9 years now. And then also the Tier 10 Waffentragger E100. Basically this micro patch that's landing, they're buffing, so there's actually 3 Waffentraggers in the client. We'll go over this soon here. They're actually buffing the nerfed one currently back up to the pre-nerf Waffentragger levels, basically damage, mainly the gun for the most part. Chieftain Prototype, so what you're going to see in my client is actually not the final version of the tank. It's getting a last minute small buff, you know, basically a small nerf too, but a small nerf to the on the move accuracy, but a buff to the engine. Specifically, you know, top speed and also the engine power to make it a little bit more maneuverable. And then the KV-4 KTTS just basically gets a little tweak with the price of it. Now, when it comes to the actual mode, so this video is released well before we pretty much know any specifics about the mode, but going off of the leaks, it looks like you might be able to get the Waffentragger E100 to play for 10 battles. In standard battles, but it's not 100% clear. That could just be for the special mode itself and not for standard battles. But why would they buff the Waffentragger that's in basically, you know, the game for people to play in standard battles? And they also labeled it essentially, we'll get here. Going back here, they labeled it so you can't platoon in it, you can only play it in standard battles, and you can't sell it. So most likely it's going to be coming back to standard battles in a limited, you know, fashion here. It looks like you're going to be able to get it though, basically for leveling up in the mode. The more you play it, the more portals that you open, basically, so loot boxes, the more rentals that you get for the Waffentragger, and also chances to get the premium tanks as well. And basically there's another link. All these links will be in the video description as well. This has some basically video from the client. Now I'm going to start off with the Chieftain Prototype. So a little bit about each tank to kind of help, you know, is it worth getting these tanks, you know, especially with the loot box mechanic, and basically spending time in the mode. Now, before everyone like freaks out about the Chieftain, like, holy shit, it's a freaking Tier 9 Chieftain Premium, like, you know, this is going to be like the Tier 10. This tank's actually pretty reasonable. So armor-wise, going off of, so 255mm, 120mm gun, you know, it actually has a freaking weak spot, you know. They didn't go, you know, like the Clan War Chieftain and, you know, give it no weak spot. It's got a cupola, not very strong. Roof's kind of weak too, but the turret, you know, while it's okay, when you start using the gun depression on this thing, you do get a small weak spot under here, and your cupola is still easily hit. Whole armor is not great, you know, well, it's basically mainly auto bouncing, but this is actually a reasonable Chieftain. You know, it's not the T95 FV4201 Chieftain version that is broken. It's like the other unreleased Chieftain versions that the armor actually isn't that great. But getting into the comparison here for this tank, so looking at it against the Conqueror and AE Phase 1, it's pretty reasonable. So penetration, a little bit higher, 262. And, you know, it's got a premium APCR shell, 310, so not a crazy high penning premium round. The HE round's decent though, so 120 millimeters of pen, really good shell velocity. So that's a plus for it. However, looking at the gun, so you do have that good gun depression, but your accuracy, 0.35, not great. Compared to the Conqueror, it's closer to a Phase 1. You do have a slightly long aiming time, and your DPM's lower than the other tanks. The way that your turret's set up, so you don't have, you know, much of a mantlet and space armor, so getting hit by HE already is going to hurt quite a bit more, and you do have that really thin hull armor too. But the mobility, when this goes up to 40 kilometers an hour with the micro patch, 13 reverse, and upping the specific power, this thing is going to be the faster out of the bunch, even if the specific power is close to the AE Phase 1. So that'll give this tank a little bit of a, you know, an edge. You know, it loses to the Conqueror when it comes to V range, but it's on par with the AE Phase 1, where, you know, it's going to be a little faster than these, but, you know, your gun does less DPM. You know, it's got some trade-offs, so it's actually pretty well balanced. You know, do I agree with releasing tanks in loot boxes? You know, it's not my, you know, decision. I personally wouldn't do it, but I'm not going to be able to stop them. But, you know, the tank's actually pretty balanced, looks cool, people are going to love it. And, you know, thank God it's not too great. The KV-4 KTTS is interesting. So from what I remember about this tank, it's been in the game files for like ever, 8+ years, maybe even longer. Pretty sure they had tried to release it as a tier 8 clan war reward tank, and it was determined that it was very frustrating to play and it wasn't worth basically releasing. That's what I remember. Could be wrong. In any event though, so it's got 45-degree traversable basically gun emplacement. It's not counted as a turret if you're looking over here. And, you know, it's got a KV-4 hull, so the armor's okay against tier 6s, tier 7s. Against 8s, it's a bit iffy though. Like looking at the armor here, we'll go against 255mm pen gun. So the armor, you know, leaves a bit to be desired. It's your KV-4 hull though. But the upper part is actually not too bad. So cupola, you know, not too bad either. So it's mainly going to be it's going to be pretty good at, you know, side scraping. So once the gun's actually pointing at you here, it is going to be a good side scraper. So like a KV-4, but with the turret on the back, or the semi-turret, you know, gun emplacement or whatever the hell you want to call it, it can actually poke around corners pretty good. So that's this tank's kind of, you know, specialty. The downside though is, you know, given that the gun is, you know, towards the back, you're going to be struggling a bit with the 5 degrees of gun depression here. So that's, you know, leaves a bit to be desired. I just threw some other tier 8 TDs in here. This tank, you know, I think it's pretty unique, you know, with the rear mounted turret or gun, traversable turret, and then, you know, it's just kind of quirky where the gun isn't too great, you know, somewhat low penetration. You know, your DPM's okay, but nothing amazing. Same thing with the accuracy. Gun depression's really going to be brutal, you know, having that turret gun, you know, position. Armor, you know, it's good at side scraping. It's not going to be great, you know, head on against tier 8, 9, and 10s though. And your mobility, surprisingly, you know, isn't too shabby when you're putting it up against these tanks. But it's a KV-4 at the end of the day, so it's not crazy, you know, fast. The one really big downside though is 350 meters of V range, which is pretty awful. Now, last but not least, so Waffentragger E100. You know, this tank was removed years ago because the thing is utterly, insanely broken. Personally, I think it should never freaking come back to the game at all. A lot of people disagree with that and think basically that, you know, the game's progressed and power creep and stuff, and it would be perfectly fine in a game. They can believe what they want. Never going to convince me, but, you know, I guess we're going to see here because they're bringing it back for what it looks like rentals, you know, that you can earn. And then, you know, basically once you run out of battles and you can't play it again until maybe next year, or if they decide to sell it, or who knows what. Nobody knows yet. But You know, this tank, it's a little scary thinking about, you know, them releasing something that, you know, they're literally making it so you can't platoon with anybody, can't play it in anything other than standard battles, and you can't sell the tank. Because they know the tank is broken. You know, it's toxic. The gameplay, and I'll get into, you know, why. It's kind of silly. The where it literally is going to have basically the craziest gun in the game. The where, sure, it's got no camo, no armor, no survivability. Doesn't matter if you can literally just sit, you know, at max view range, wherever, and nobody can push on you, which is the problem that this tank had when it was in the game, is it just deletes pretty much anything that comes towards it. So, you know, I don't even have to pull up the armor. It doesn't have armor. But what you're going to be seeing in this tank, so 560 damage, you got 5 rounds, and it only takes 2 seconds to shoot each round. Your penetration's at 276, which I threw the Foshes in here because I feel like the guns are the closest, especially the Foch B, even though they're not direct comparisons. You got pretty good penetration on your premium round as well. But, so 560 damage, 5 rounds, 2 seconds to reload, 1.44 second aiming time, 0.28 dispersion, and the DPM, granted, you know, it's not stellar. You know, it's less than the Foch Bs, more than 155s, but you literally delete pretty much any tier 10 in the game, barring a few, with each magazine. So literally nothing can push on you, and it's not like, say, a Minotauro that was just released that has a really derpy gun, iffy penetration, and it takes what, 6-8 seconds or whatever between each round to hit you. This thing literally just vaporizes you with pinpoint accuracy, a fully functional frickin' turret, and yeah, you're just gone. The where it's this really toxic gameplay, the where I remember playing against this thing to where you either went to a different side than the thing, where you thought it was going to be, and you tried to beat the enemy team and then deal with it later and hope that you had enough teammates, or you basically had to like get lucky and HE and swarm it and like double, triple team it because it would just delete one of you in the process. Because either it can just roll around and clip you, or it just sits, you know, depending on the map. You know, say like something like Prokofka, or even like a different map like Cliff, and it's back on that TD ledge. It literally, you can't go within its field of, you know, basically firing, you know, fire control area, because it just deletes a poor soul in like 6-8, you know, seconds, you know, pretty quickly. That's the issue with the tank. The where hit points, it's got a fair amount of hit points. It's got pretty shitty armor, and then mobility is not too great. It's not the slowest thing either, like 40 kilometers an hour top speed, 15 kilometers an hour in reverse, and the view range 380 is kind of standard. Getting into this tank though, so I had played around a little bit on the live stream with it. And we're like, what happens like if you kind of like pimp this tank out? The field mods help out this tank pretty well. So this helps a bit with mobility, to where personally, so it doesn't matter increasing your pretty much non-existent aiming time to buff the accuracy. You know, this, who cares if you lose a little bit of your really epic camouflage here, to where the field mods are kind of a joke, to where they're just pure buffs for this tank. This is the only one that's kind of interesting. So like, reduce your reload time, but increase your aiming speed and aiming circle size. Just a little bit of like napkin math. Like, I think it'll be better to take the reload, because I don't think even with this 15% aiming circle bloom between firing, that'll be that big of a downside, but I could be wrong. And then otherwise, why not get some more hit points, you know? But like, when you start, you know, kitting this thing out, and like if you're going kind of full all out here, you can't equip a gun rammer, and you can't equip a whatchamajig vent, because it's open top. But what was I gonna throw in here? Bounty aiming unit, I believe. I don't even know if I didn't improve it. And then with this, so this is if, you know, someone's going all out here. Free shell, and I think I went with a turbocharger. or improved compressor. This tank becomes pretty crazy, which I guess it only matters if I throw food on this. So like when you're looking at somebody like fully pimping this thing out, you know, if it wasn't scary already, like you're getting it down to about a 50-second reload, but you know, DPM's better, but you have 0.23 accuracy, still under 1.5 second aiming time. The gun just becomes even sillier when you start thinking about it, for the amount of burst it has, accuracy, penetration. It's crazy. You know, this is why this tank was removed, where I don't buy the whole, and especially when you're not able to throw a rammer or vents on too, so that makes it easy, like, hey, let's just chuck more HP. You got extra 320 HP here. Let's buff the accuracy, you know, buff the mobility, and now I go 46, you know, easy choice, you know, you don't have to, you know, pick and choose between a rammer and vents. It makes the decision for you. Granted, you know, your V range is only 438, you know, you do sacrifice a little bit there, but in any event though, you know, this tank, hopefully this gives you a little bit of a hint on how to fight it. It's basically don't go near it because it looks at you and then you're dead. But basically throw AG at it and hope that your arty nukes it into oblivion. But in any event, should be interesting. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited. The other two tanks, you know, they don't look crazy good. The Chieftain Prototype will definitely hold its own. KV-4 KTTS I think will be more of a novelty. And this tank I really hope is just a rental and it goes away eventually, because I think it's going to be utterly broken in standard battles. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think other people's opinion of it being okay in today's game is, I don't think it's gonna lean that way, but again, I hope I'm wrong. Thanks again for watching this video though, and I hope you have fun playing this mode, however it turns out, and you know, hopefully most of this is correct, the info in here, and have a good one. Thanks again for watching.